Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. Welcome to The Writing Life. And I have to say, we've been on a roll lately with just some fabulous poets, and today is no exception. Lynn Otto is with us, and we feel so blessed to have her. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
And I actually, you may know, I've had the opportunity to hear you read at the Gallery at Ten Oaks. So good stuff. And
Thanks.
You have a new book out.
I do.
Okay. So Real Daughter, which, Caroline, if we have that there, won the Unicorn Press First Book Award. And to me, that is so cool. Tell us a little bit about do you enter? How does that happen?
Oh, that's a great question. For poets, getting a book published, well, there's different ways to go about it, but a very common one is to enter contests,
Okay.
especially first book contests. It costs money most of the time to do that.
Okay. But it's legitimate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, there are contests that aren't per se legitimate. You can enter a contest
Right.
and then end up having to actually pay to get your book published.
Right.
That's not, I mean, you have to do your homework.
Right.
So Unicorn wasn't like that.
Okay.
So when I finished my MFA program, I had a manuscript because you have to, that's your thesis as a manuscript.
Okay.
And I did send it out that first year afterwards to a few contests, several contests, and didn't get any takers. And I thought, I shouldn't spend the money at this point. I need to see if I can get individual poems placed in good journals.
Okay.
And once that's happening, then I'll send the manuscript out. And I also just didn't quite feel like the manuscript was what I wanted it to be yet.
Okay.
So I worked for a few more years on it, meanwhile sending out individual poems. And when those started getting accepted, and when I felt the manuscript was more cohesive and more what I wanted it to be, then I started sending it to contests again.
Okay.
My final year of my MFA program, I got a fellowship. I hadn't expected it. It's not what I applied for or anything like that, but
Right.
it was, I was chosen by the professors for the Excellence Fellowship in Poetry, which gave me a little bit of money to spend on submission fees.
Well, it gives
So-
and credibility. I mean, not
Yeah.
that you didn't have it, but just it's
It was
nice
encouraging.
to be
It was
acknowledged.
encouraging, but it did give me the money for those submission fees.
Okay.
You know, submission fees are sort of controversial in the lit journal world. I mean, when you're paying for, say, Submittable and so on, you kind of like to get some money from your submitters to help you pay for it and so on. But it does close doors for some people.
Sure.
You know, even $2 or $3, you know, can add up. So I love it when journals have it optional, like pay it if you can to support
really?
us.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that was available.
Yeah, some
Okay.
journals do. Pay it if you can to support us, but if you can't, don't worry, we want to see your work.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and help me through this because I really don't know. My assumption is that some of these organizations are probably smaller. I don't know if they're associated with universities and maybe some are, some aren't.
Some are, some aren't, yeah.
But in the real world, there are costs. And so,
Oh, yeah.
And when I say legitimate, it wasn't to challenge, it was just to say somebody is passionate about something, it doesn't mean they have the dough.
Right.
So to help this along, you would see why they would charge some kind
Oh,
of a
sure.
fee.
Especially if there's a contest, you know, monetary contest
Of
prize
course. Where
that
does
gets
that come
funded
from?
too, and they are likely paying a guest judge.
Okay.
In my case, it was Julie Funderburk,
Okay.
who chose my book as in the final round.
Oh, boy.
And she probably got some sort of honorarium for her work. So definitely, these things do
Yeah.
cost money. Yeah.
Now, do you have input? And what I'm thinking is, I'm going to back up a step. When you said you did this for your MFA, but you weren't quite satisfied with it or comfortable or something, was it the work itself? Was it like was it thematic? Was there an arrangement?
Yeah, it wasn't quite tight enough for me thematically. I wanted the book to come together
Okay.
thematically. And I also felt like the poems, there were poems that I wasn't that proud of, and I
Okay.
wanted to just jettison those or revise them until I
Okay.
thought, okay, that poem can stand next to my best poem now and not wither,
Sure,
you know?
sure, okay.
I wanted the whole book to be something I'd be proud of, so.
You bet.
Yes, I kept working on it.
Once you do a book, in fact, I'll quote something. I've heard, if you want to be immortal, have a child, write a book, plant a tree. And I say that because once it's printed, that's it.
I know.
And so it's scary because
yes.
you're kind of thinking, oh my gosh, is it good enough? Is it just right? Could I change a period? Or
Just the other day, I thought, why did I break that line there? You know, it's
Right.
like, oh, that's dumb. I should have done that. You know, and it's
Sure.
like, it's there. Well, you know, I could change it in a subsequent printing if I wanted to,
Yeah.
or, you know, if I
And if
included
you
the same
did, then the
poem.
next one you'd want to change back.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are tough. So you were talking about, I thought where you were going with this is that you were the resident associate at the National Humanities Center in North Carolina. Is that related to what we're talking about?
Well, I worked a lot on the book there.
Okay.
I had 9 months to do almost nothing but read and write.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was great. And I had all the library support I wanted. I mean, in other words, before I even got there, the librarian of the National Humanities Center emailed me and said, what books do you want in your study? And I sent her a long list, and there they were. And
Oh
I
my
could
gosh.
keep them. I could keep them the whole 9 months, and order any.
No late fees.
No, order any further ones that I wanted.
Really?
So it was a good year of reading, research, but also getting to know North Carolina poets and so on.
Sure.
This press, Unicorn Press, is located in Greensboro, North Carolina, but I didn't meet the publisher while I was there, although I did meet someone who had a book published by Unicorn Press, and I
Okay.
had bought his book, Terry Kennedy's book. So I knew what the books looked like. I knew that Unicorn made a nice-looking book.
Right.
So when I saw that they had a contest, I thought, oh, I'll submit there.
Oh good, okay.
Yeah.
In conjunction with this, you were reading and writing, were you also mentoring or teaching or reviewing? What is this, when you get to go there, is it just for you or is it for them as well?
It was extremely lucky. My husband
Okay.
is a historian, and he actually got a National Humanities Fellowship
Oh my
to be
gosh.
there. So he got paid to be there.
Sure.
I got to apply to be an associate resident, which means you get all the perks, but you don't get paid.
Oh,
so you get
okay.
an
All right.
office, you get the library support, you get the fellowship of all the other fellows there. So, I mean, every lunch hour, you know, you go to the center of the building and you get to talk to scholars from around the world. It was extremely stimulating. So, I remember when the phone call came, yes, you're approved to be an associate resident. I was just like, all right, I get to go to the National Humanities Center. I was just like, you know, like the top of my head came off, you know,
Right.
like that was thrilling.
So the timing was you and your husband?
Yes.
Because these are two separate things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. He was, you know, he was the one going, and I had to
Okay.
tag along and know nobody until I got, you know, the associate residency.
Okay.
In which case, I then would also have a community while I was there.
Okay.
So that was really cool.
And you talked about the books, which sounds fabulous. I mean, that for a lot of us, that's sort of a nirvana. But what kind of books? In other words, you're doing poetry. Did you just read poetry? Is it?
I did read a lot of poetry.
Okay.
I also read a lot about mother and daughter relationships, about
Okay.
caregiving, about death. My mom had died the year previous
Oh.
from ALS.
Okay.
I had been one of her caregivers. So something I was interested in, you know, just how other people wrote about caregiving.
What a tough path. Though.
Yeah, and how people approached death and dying,
Yeah.
medically and otherwise. So it was an opportunity to read a lot.
To not universally, but to a great extent, we all at some point do that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I heard that characterized as now you're the head of the generation train,
Yeah.
and somebody in front of you is no longer there.
Yeah, and during the time I just really felt myself a link to, in a chain of women, particularly
Okay.
my mother and myself and my daughter.
Right.
I actually have 3 daughters, but in the book, it's one daughter that I write about.
Okay.
Yeah, so just feeling like, well, I think that's one of the reasons I chose this knitting sort of art for the cover, just that sense of being linked, of being part of a chain.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
what I pass on from my mom to my daughter, what
Sure.
I don't, what I wish I had from my mom, and I don't have for my daughter, those sorts of things.
Right. When I ask about your input, that's kind of what I meant, because I think if you sell a novel to in a traditional Penguin or somebody, you don't get to pick the cover.
No, it was
Yeah.
a lovely contract. I had full approval over the interior and the exterior. They designed the interior, Andrew Salters did, and sent me the PDF of it, and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then it took a while to find a cover. He sent me several images that
good
just
for you.
didn't fit right. I was
Because
like,
you knew what you
"No."
wanted.
Well, I wasn't
Or
sure what I
the
wanted.
feeling.
Yeah, but I knew what I didn't want.
Right.
And I said, no. And finally, I got online and I started searching for, I think this one came up when I was looking for, I think maybe the search word was ravel or something like
Okay.
that, and art. And then I found this on someone's Pinterest page. They were collecting art that had to do with knitting. And from there,
boy.
found the artist's page. Carol McDonald lives in Vermont and has a lot of art that uses knitting motifs. This is drawn or painted. So it's not actual knitting you're looking at. She draws that.
Okay.
So, and then I contacted her and I said, I have this book of poems and I saw your art online and I love it, especially this one. And would you be open to having your art be a book cover?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm sure you wouldn't want your beautiful art paired up with bad poems, so I'd be happy to send you, a
Nice.
PDF of the interior
Yeah.
of the book, and you can tell me what you think. And she emailed me the next day, so I did. Yeah, she said,
Yeah.
yeah, please do. And she emailed me the next day. She said, I love your poems.
Oh boy.
I'd be happy to have
Yeah.
my cover on your book. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah. In fact, there is a poem in there about knitting. It's called A Piece of Knitting, Pantoum. Pantoum is a kind of poem. So, yeah.
Kind of a segue there. I read that you, although you work alone, I mean, that's kind of the nature of writing, you really love to observe collaboration.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
But really you did it here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is, and even in writing, I do write alone, of course. Well, actually, every Thursday morning I get together with a friend at a coffee shop
Okay.
as a writing sort of appointment.
Okay.
It's like if I can't fit any writing in the rest of the week, at least I've got Thursday morning, and we hold each other to that.
Okay.
But yes,
And
I
do you write at that time?
I do.
Okay.
We do. We both do. She writes prose. I write poetry, and
Oh.
we just we
It's
talk
kind of like
for
your workout buddy.
Yeah, we talk for a while. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy to not write. It's easy to let life sort of take over, encroach upon your writing time. But yeah, when I do write something, I have a critique group that I bring it to.
Okay.
I listen to them. The things that I'm reading are sort of part of the collaborative process, just all the poets that have come before me.
Right.
This book, I met the publisher at AWP Conference, Association of Writing and Writing Programs, that was in Portland a couple weeks ago. Found out that these books are handmade. So, I mean,
Really?
yeah.
Now, see,
I mean,
wouldn't-
Andrew's hands have actually folded these pages. He's put holes through there's 3 signatures, there's groups of pages. Put holes through them with an awl, sewed them by hand, clipped them, glued them, trimmed them, and the print run is 501 books total.
Okay.
So that's a lot of
That's a lot of
work.
work. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely it's a collaborative,
That's neat.
collaborative thing to make a book. And then of course my professors, shaped my thinking about,
course.
helped shape my thinking about poems and helped me see what they could do. So yeah.
I think I think that that's a nebulous concept in some sense. If you were in wood shop and you're building a frame, it's so tangible. But the concept of what can a poem do, boy, how do you weigh that? How do you measure it?
Yeah.
I think you have to feel it. Obviously, you do.
Yeah, when I first started writing, I had been hearing poems on Prairie Home Companion.
Okay.
No. Writer's Almanac, everyday
same
poem.
guy.
Yes, Garrison Keillor.
Yeah, right.
So I'd been hearing poems and just started noticing sort of how they work or how they're put together.
Okay.
And they're, of course, different poems are put together different ways, but there's certain tools that poets use. And I started noticing them. Oh, you know, and so I thought, I'll try that. And it was a lot of fun.
So
you
Lynn,
know?
you're an adult at that point?
Yeah, I'm in my 40s.
No, well, I mean, but when you, what I'm
At the
saying is,
time, yeah.
did you, like in college or whatever, you were not a poet then?
No.
So you came to this very
Late.
consciously? Okay,
Yeah, yeah. I did write a couple poems in junior high.
yeah. Don't we all?
Yeah, but my dad was really encouraging. He said, "These are great. These are wonderful. You should send them to the Reader's Digest, you know."
Yeah.
And I did. Yeah. They don't take poems, of course. Have you ever seen a poem in Reader's
Well,
Digest? No, they don't.
But good for
So-
him,
but
and
yeah,
good for
he was
you for doing
encouraging.
it.
Yeah, but anyway, I didn't write since then, you know.
Okay.
Until I was in my 40s, and then I thought, oh, I want to try this, and it was a blast.
So, and I'm kind of sticking with this for just a minute because you are a poet. That's the way I define you. That's the way I look at you. And I think then that almost by default, it's like, oh, she was always a poet, but you weren't.
No,
and I
I've-
think that that's wonderful.
I've been writing for a long time,
Okay.
but mostly for other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
technical work or?
promotional work,
Yeah.
like I wrote for colleges and so on. Yeah, and then when I first started writing poems, I entered a few poems into the Arts Alliance's
Okay.
Paper Gardens.
Paper Garden.
Yeah, contest, and I placed some poems there, and
Oh,
that was
great.
exciting. And I, at the time, was also writing a little bit of, creative nonfiction, some memoir stuff. One of those pieces got placed as well. But eventually, I just thought, I want to write poems. I love this.
Well, it sure took.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. It took a while before I could call myself a poet, and I think I finally can now.
You know, I was a member, I guess, and I'm trying to even think now who the people are. In Portland, there's a writing group or association.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's
the-
literary arts, and then there's.
Not, I know them, but
Oh, I'm really bad. I have a really terrible memory. But
okay, but
Attic is one.
yeah. My point was they talked about there was a newsletter, and the woman said that we do that we're reluctant to call ourselves writers, and that we shouldn't be, and also to not beat yourself up when you're not writing, because she said you're still a writer, but you're fallow.
Well, yeah.
You're processing.
Everything goes in.
Sure.
I'm a copy editor, so sometimes, especially with a deadline coming up, I just have to, keep my nose to the grindstone. I mean, I'm looking at my computer the whole day, but I'm not writing. I'm reading
Right.
and correcting other people's writing
Right.
and so on. But what I'm reading is often very interesting. I do a lot of academic anthropology books, and so I'm reading just incredible stuff. Death rights around the world, for example, was one of them that I thought was fascinating stuff, you know, and it feeds into another poem, So,
I would think so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So many things I want to ask you. Now, let me finish up with this. And so, because it's thematic, I suspect that there is an order to the poems, even though they're standalone, or am I just assuming that?
No, I didn't just shuffle them and
Throw 'em
call
in.
it done. My carpet was strewn with poems, and I moved things around, and things like that, and it changed order several times. Yeah.
Because I would think, I'm picking this out of the air, but it would be like music. It builds to a crescendo, or one thing is a foundation for something else,
Yeah.
or at least they're complementary.
Yeah, there's certain poems that kind of speak to other poems, or yeah, it's tricky to order poems because it's not a narrative arc.
Right.
There's just you maybe find a slight hint of that in there, but yeah, there's an intentional order.
Okay. I'm going to digress again. You used the word signature.
Yeah.
And I've read that, but I don't know what it means.
Yeah, it's a section of pages. So this book has 3
Oh, sure. I
signatures.
see
It's
it.
a sewn. So
Okay.
it's like 9 pages that are folded and sewn. That's a signature.
Okay.
And I didn't know that until a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay. You reminded me as you picked that up. Can you read something?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops.
Okay.
Okay. I'll read the first poem.
Okay.
It's called Marcescens, which is kind of a fancy word, and I'm not usually a big fan of fancy words. But when I was in North Carolina, I noticed that the beech trees did not drop their leaves in the wintertime. They stood there, you know, their arms, their branches almost straight out, and they were beautiful, but
Okay.
I thought, oh, that's so strange. So I did a little research and found out that there's a word for it, and it's Marcescens.
Really?
Yeah. So I thought, oh, what an interesting idea, the idea of not letting something go. And I thought, I got to write a poem. And then I think it was the next day, I hadn't started the poem yet because I'm, you know, sort of mulling this over. I read this interview with an editor who says, he's talking about going through the slush pile, you know,
Okay.
of submissions to a
Right,
journal, and
right.
he says a bad word, so I'll just elide it. He said, and then you come across another stupid tree poem.
Yeah.
He used you know,
Something
an F
else.
word.
Yeah.
That's stupid. And I thought, oh, so there's like way too many tree poems apparently. And I was sort of, you know, hesitant to write it, but thought, no, I have to write this poem. So I did.
Good.
Marcescens. The beech's light brown leaves in horizontal layers, like my mother's tiered serving trays, artfully placed in the winter forest. And here we are in another stupid tree poem, this one, about the difficulty of letting go of something already dead. Such a fancy word for it when it comes to trees, Marcescens. You could name a daughter that. Unlike fury, unlike grief. Like the beeches, I'm slow to harden my cells, allow abscission, another elegant arboreal term, those tidy partings between twig and withered leaf, or the calm release of ripe fruit. Consider the clean white spaces between each layer of a family tree. It isn't like that at all.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
My sort of go-to standard question for poets, and you're not going to escape. Why is this so powerful? Why this form? And so we do, and I think poetry is thousands of years old, I suspect. I mean Greek and maybe before. But why? What is it about us or us and poetry that grabs us, that is so
Yeah.
powerful?
Boy, a lot happens in such a small space in a poem. I think that's also what makes poems kind of tiring to read. Like even people who love
You have to
poetry,
work at it.
you know, I can read a few poems and it's like, oh, it's like you eat, you know, this great big meal or something,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's small. So it's not like I could sit down
It's
and read it.
rich.
Yeah. So yeah, why? I think because poems take you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
They have the power to do that, and it can happen pretty fast. And it can shift you around pretty fast too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can laugh one moment, you know, another stupid tree poem, and then suddenly you're talking about grief, you know, and suddenly you recognize, yeah, it is hard, these relationships, you know. I think poems can work with defamiliarization, right? Instead of saying, let's talk about parenting, right? I'm going to talk about trees. And then you're just sucked in. Okay, I'm comfortable talking about trees, you know?
Oh boy,
and
yeah.
then suddenly you're thinking, yeah, my
Yeah.
daughter, my
Right,
son,
right.
you know? And you're seeing it in a different way because I've sort of, you know, tricked you
Broken
in
down
a
the
way.
barriers,
but yeah,
right.
I've
You're not-
taken you out of some place that you think you know,
Right.
and put you somewhere where you think, where you can sort of look freshly. I mean, it's like, I think people who read poems are people who want to hear music and who want to notice things. And a good poem, gives you that. It's like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, and then you get to make these connections,
Right.
which is sort of this thrilling. You know, it's like when you solve a hard puzzle or something. It's like, yes, I got it. And it's like that's really exciting,
Right.
you know, to do that. And you just, I think that's why they're powerful. You know,
Yeah.
they take us in and like. Suddenly like, whoa, where did I go?
if I were asked that, I would say, in part, that it's distilled language. So you've got the story, and then you take out all the little bits and stuff, and what you're left with is the concentration.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. The other thing is that, as you said, you start off thinking you're going maybe one path, and boy, you get to the end, and oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it brings you right around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like poems that take me someplace that I didn't expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, me too.
Great fun.
You were talking about copy editing, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'd read that about you. So when you say copy editing, that definition is specific.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about that, and then the scientific work that you do. You don't have to be the scientist. You're not correcting that, I guess.
No. Copy editing is looking at things at a sentence level, sometimes at a paragraph level. Yeah, also at a paragraph level. You know, is everything clear? Is it all punctuated correctly? Does it adhere to the style guidelines
Okay.
of the publisher?
Gotcha.
So sometimes I'll be, moving a few things around, cleaning up grammar. I noticed a lot of dangling modifiers that have to be corrected. And then
Okay.
I do footnote and bibliographic entry,
Okay.
all these tiny little minute,
They may know about
format
cultures, but they don't
things.
know grammar, maybe.
Yeah, right. They're
Yeah.
brilliant people that
Yeah.
don't necessarily recognize the dangling modifier, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's part of what makes a book happen.
So that's a kind of a technical thing. I think you could say that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
additionally, you mentor writers, I think. Is
Yes.
that, okay. So I have a specific question. Well, I'll just ask you now. How do you do that without making the work your work? Do you know what I
Sure.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty careful to find out what they're trying to do.
Okay.
That's an important question. What do you want to do with this poem, and what is the poem trying to do? I don't think I could make someone
Okay.
write like me. I certainly have things I don't like, and I might try to steer a poet into new territory if they're kind of stuck in a place that I think isn't working.
Right.
But I want my goal when I'm working with a writer is to give them as many tools as possible.
Okay.
And to get practice using those tools, to see what the possibilities are so they can do what they want to do.
Right.
Right? So
And
I
I suspect-
introduce them to work that's a wide range, things
Okay.
that even I might not like, but they might,
Right.
Yeah.
You can recognize something as having quality without caring for it, or without preferring
Oh,
that
certainly.
or liking it. Yeah.
Certainly.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I suspect that's when you were in school, that's what somebody did for you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that's teaching.
Yeah, I was in a cohort where each one of us wrote so differently,
Mm-hmm.
wildly differently, and we had to critique each other's work and just, not according to our own likes and dislikes, but yeah, according to what's.
I like this approach. So I was taught when you're in a critique group or when you're helping somebody, that you need to take the position, pretend that you're the editor of a publication, and the work has been accepted. You've already paid for this.
Right,
You've
yeah.
got it. So now your job is just make it better.
Yeah.
It doesn't work to say, no, I don't like this.
No.
Well, that's too bad because you already have it. So now you just have to make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good for you. It's and I know that you're there. When you do this a while, you can remove yourself from the liking part, and because you recognize the quality in another way. Maybe it's subject, maybe it's approach, something, but you don't have to like it to make it better.
No. It's nice to work with work that you like,
Sure.
But and I tend to I like a wide range of work as well. So anyway,
So that
there's just a
helps.
lot of wonderful work out there.
Yeah, there is.
So I'm glad.
You're wonderful. And I want to let everybody know, I don't know that this will air in time, but I'm going to say it anyway. This Saturday, April 13th, there's going to be, I'm going to call it open mic. I think you have to kind of sign up ahead of time, but at Mecca, which is a new art gallery in town, if I can remember, I think it's 636 Northeast Baker in McMinnville. And Lynn, I hope you're going to be there.
I hope to be.
Yeah, so, and I will see you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Ran out of time, folks, sorry. I'm Stephen W. Long. I always say visit me at stephenwlong.com. Suggest a guest, a topic, whatever, just give us some feedback. And we'll see you next time on The Writing Life. Thanks.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know, you guys want to do one just with yourself without me doing the
They think we're
podcast?
done,
No,
they got
no,
enough, they got enough.
They got enough? Probably, okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch. I'm
Oh.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use a bite too.